The night air was sharp enough to sting my lungs. I'd been running for hours, bare feet slapping against cold pavement, heart hammering so hard it felt like it might burst through my chest. The forest thinned behind me, the border lights of a quiet human town flickering ahead like a promise of safety I didn't dare believe in. I'd made it out. Out of the pack's territory. Out of their reach. Or so I hoped. My name is Jiho, an Omega born to a pack that saw me as a bargaining chip, not a person. They'd planned to offer me to an alpha I didn't love, a cruel man with a voice that always sounded like a threat. The moment I overheard the deal being sealed, I ran. I didn't pack clothes, or food. Just my ID, a little cash, and my mother's pendant. By the time I stumbled into the town of Hanul's Crossing, my legs were shaking. The streets were almost empty, 1 or 2 shops closing for the night, neon signs buzzing softly in the misty rain. Then I heard it, the low growl of an engine behind me. I froze. A police jeep rolled to a stop beside me. Its headlights spilled across the wet street, catching on my soaked hair and torn clothes. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The door opened and a tall man stepped out. Sheriff Minseok. I didn't know his name yet, only that his scent hit me like a wave. Strong, deep, unmistakably alpha. It curled through the rain and smoke, all cedarwood and amber, and it made my knees feel weak. "You lost, kid?" His voice was calm, deep, with the faintest rough edge, like he'd spent years trying not to sound too dangerous. I swallowed hard. "I'm just passing through." He studied me, eyes dark and unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. His presence filled the street. Every move he made was quiet, controlled, but I could feel the tension rolling off him. "Where's your home?" he asked. My throat closed. "Far from here." He glanced at my arms, the faint scars, the tremble in my hands. Then back to my eyes. Something shifted in his gaze, softening just enough to make my chest ache. "Come on," he said finally. "You shouldn't be walking alone at this hour. It's not safe." I should have said no. Every instinct told me to run again. But my body leaned toward him like he was the only warmth left in the world. Inside his jeep, the air was thick with his scent. The silence between us buzzed with something I didn't understand, or maybe something I'd been denying all along. "So," he said, his voice low, "what's your name?" "Jiho," I whispered. He glanced at me, just a flicker, but it felt like a spark ran through my veins. "I'm Minseok." The way he said it, simple, grounded, made my heart skip. We drove through winding streets until he pulled up beside a small house on the edge of town. Wooden porch, a light burning in the kitchen window. Not the kind of place an alpha sheriff usually lived, I thought. It was quiet. Human. "You can stay here tonight," he said, turning off the engine. "I'll call someone from social services in the morning." I nodded, but when I tried to step out, my legs almost gave out. Minseok caught me by the wrist, his hand warm, rough, steady. Our eyes met. Something inside me stirred, sharp and wild. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. He seemed to feel it too, the pull, the bond neither of us wanted to acknowledge. For a long, breathless moment, we just stood there in the rain, close enough that I could see the faint line of a scar across his jaw. "You're trembling," he said softly. "Let's get you warm." Inside, he handed me a towel and one of his shirts. It hung loose over my shoulders, the scent of him sinking into my skin. My fingers brushed the collar and I shivered. "Thank you," I murmured. He nodded, leaning against the counter, watching me with that same unreadable calm. "You've been running for a while, haven't you?" I hesitated. "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "Whatever it is you're running from, you're safe here tonight." His words should have comforted me. Instead, they made something ache in my chest. Because even as he said it, I could feel the truth in his scent, the faint flicker of restraint. His wolf recognized me. And my own was answering. The space between us felt smaller than it should have been. I caught his gaze again, and for a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air grew heavier, his scent stronger. My body responded instinctively, heat blooming low in my belly. He straightened suddenly, breaking the moment. "There's a spare room. Get some rest." I nodded, clutching the towel tighter. "Good night, Sheriff." He paused at the door. "Just Minseok," he said quietly. The sound of his name lingered after he left, like a whisper in the dark. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, wrapped in the scent of his shirt. I told myself it was just safety I felt, gratitude maybe. But deep down I knew better. I'd met alphas before. Cruel, greedy, territorial men who saw omegas as tools. But Minseok was different. His silence was full of control, his eyes held secrets, and his scent, it called to me in ways I couldn't fight. When I closed my eyes, I could still see him standing in the rain, the way his hand lingered when he caught me, the heat of his gaze when our eyes met. And for the first time in years, I didn't dream of running. I dreamed of staying. I woke to the faint glow of dawn spilling through the thin curtains. The room smelled faintly of wood and the lingering warmth of the night before, and of him. Minseok. My chest tightened at the memory of his presence so close, so solid, yet restrained. The way he had watched me, his hand briefly brushing mine when he handed me the towel, it had been enough to set my nerves alight. I sat up slowly, careful not to disturb the loose folds of his oversized shirt wrapped around me. It was soft, comforting, and it still carried that subtle scent of him, clean, earthy, and tinged with something that made my stomach flutter. I should leave. I should run while I had the chance. But something held me. Something about him made my limbs feel rooted, even as my mind screamed caution. The floor creaked lightly behind me and I froze. "Morning," came his voice, low and calm. Minseok leaned against the doorway, arms crossed loosely, eyes unreadable but intense. My heart stumbled at the sight of him. Even in the early light, his presence was magnetic, broad-shouldered, strong, yet controlled. His gaze lingered on me, and for a moment, the world shrank to just the two of us. "Good morning," I managed, my voice smaller than I intended. He stepped forward, slow, measured. "You slept well." I hesitated, aware of how absurd it felt to be so conscious of him. "Yes, thanks," I said. The words sounded hollow to my own ears, but I couldn't bring myself to speak anything else. Minseok nodded, his eyes scanning me like he was weighing me, not just as a person, but as something else. My pulse skipped. He took a seat near the window, arms resting on his knees, and for a long moment, we just looked at each other. No words, just the quiet hum of morning settling into the cabin. Finally, he spoke again. "You're not just a lost kid, are you?" I stiffened. His tone wasn't accusatory, but it carried a sharpness that made me shiver. "I'm not," I admitted, hesitating. My lips pressed together, unsure if I wanted him to know everything. Running, hiding, my pack's cruelty, it all felt too raw, too exposing. His gaze softened slightly, but the intensity didn't fade. "I thought so," he said quietly. You're an omega." My stomach dropped. I had expected it, yet hearing him say it aloud made it impossible to deny. The air seemed to thicken between us. My body betrayed me, responding instinctively to the subtle power in his voice, the way he leaned slightly forward, the warmth radiating from him even across the small space of the room. "I didn't mean to," I began, but he cut me off, not with words, but a raised hand, palm open, calm and firm. "I know," he said softly. "You're safe here. For now." The word alone made my heart clench. Because for the first time in months, I believed it. I wanted to believe it. I lowered my gaze to the floor, feeling the weight of his presence settle over me, protective and unyielding. There was something dangerously intoxicating about the way he carried himself. The unspoken authority, the restraint, the strength coiled beneath calm surfaces. It made my chest tighten in a way that felt almost unbearable. "Jiho," he said, his voice dropping another octave, low and deliberate. "If anyone comes after you, they'll have to get through me first." I felt a shiver ripple down my spine. His hand brushed briefly against mine as he leaned back to adjust his chair. It was innocent enough, almost accidental, but the contact lingered in my veins like fire. I couldn't ignore it, and I didn't want to. "I didn't mean to drag anyone into this," I whispered, looking at him with a mix of fear and vulnerability. "You're not dragging anyone," he said, leaning forward slightly, his gaze holding mine. "I'm not letting anyone hurt you." The sincerity in his voice struck something deep inside me. I wanted to look away, to protect myself from feeling too much, but my body refused. I was drawn to him, to the warmth he radiated, the quiet dominance he carried without arrogance. We sat in silence after that, each lost in our own thoughts but tethered together by something neither of us could define. I could feel his eyes on me whenever I dared to glance up, and it made my skin flush, my breath catch. The air around him was heavy, charged, almost electric in the quiet of the morning. Eventually, he stood and moved toward the small kitchen, preparing coffee with careful, deliberate movements. Even the mundane motion seemed intimate, the soft scrape of a spoon against ceramic, the quiet exhale of breath, the way his shirt clung to his frame. I watched him from the corner of my eye, my heartbeat picking up. "You need to eat," he said, turning slightly, the corner of his mouth tilting in a subtle, almost imperceptible smile. "You've been running for hours." "I don't have much appetite," I admitted. "You will," he said simply, with that commanding tone that brooked no argument. "And after that you'll rest. No more running for now." I nodded, though my stomach fluttered with nerves. His words carried an authority that felt as much emotional as physical, and I realized that I wanted to obey him, not just out of trust, but out of something else. Something I wasn't ready to name. He poured me a cup of tea, steam curling between us, warm and fragrant. I took it with shaking hands, and he watched, leaning slightly against the counter, his presence filling the room, making it smaller and warmer all at once. "Jiho," he said, finally breaking the quiet, "I need you to understand something." I looked up, meeting his gaze. There was a sharpness there now, underlined by care, and my chest fluttered. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. "And I won't let you face this world by yourself." The intensity in his eyes, the promise in his words, made something coil inside me, a mix of longing, fear, and something dangerously magnetic. My pulse raced. The air between us was thick with tension, charged by emotions neither of us could deny. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. Truly seen. And it terrified me how much I wanted to stay in that gaze, under that warmth, under the magnetic pull of alpha strength and quiet protectiveness. I didn't move, didn't speak. I simply let the moment stretch, felt the electricity of proximity, and let my heart respond in ways I wasn't ready to explain. Minseok, for his part, didn't rush me. He simply remained near, letting the quiet, the shared breaths, and the unspoken bond fill the room. And in that silence, in that charged air, I realized that my world had shifted, irrevocably, dangerously, beautifully. I was no longer just a runaway omega. I was his. At least in a way that neither of us could ignore. The day had been long, but sleep had evaded me. My body ached from running, from hiding, from every emotion I'd bottled up over the past weeks. Even the comfort of Minseok's cabin couldn't chase away the tension coiling inside me. I didn't want to admit it, but the moment I caught his scent in the morning, in that quiet, golden dawn light, I felt something stir deep within me. Something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Longing, desire, and a strange sense of belonging. Minseok had been quiet all day, giving me space while still remaining close enough that I could feel his presence in every glance, every subtle movement. Even the smallest gestures. Him leaning against the counter, stretching his arms, adjusting the shirt on his shoulders, made my chest tighten in ways I couldn't explain. I tried to focus on small things, helping him in the kitchen, tidying up, stacking firewood. But every time I moved, I felt his gaze follow me. I knew it wasn't just casual observation. There was an intensity there, a barely restrained energy that made my pulse race and my thoughts spiral. By mid-afternoon, I found myself sitting on the porch steps, the wind tugging at my hair, trying to breathe normally. That's when he came out, leaning against the railing beside me. His broad frame blocked the sunlight, and the heat of his body pressed close enough that I could smell him. Faint cedar, something smoky, warm, and utterly intoxicating. "You're tense," he said softly. I shrugged, trying to appear casual. It's just, everything. I've never been anywhere like this. He didn't move, just let the silence hang between us. Then, in a gesture so simple yet deliberate, he reached over and let his fingers brush mine as they rested on the railing. That small contact sent sparks through me, a fire I wasn't ready to admit. I can feel it, he said, his voice low. Your heartbeat, your pulse, you're on edge. I swallowed hard, heart racing. I'm fine, I murmured, though I knew I wasn't. The truth was his nearness was overwhelming. Every instinct in me screamed to pull away, yet every fiber of my being longed to lean closer. Minseok's hand lingered near mine, almost brushing again, and I felt a shiver travel through me. He tilted his head, studying me, and for the first time, there was a softness in his gaze, curiosity, concern, and something deeper, something that made my chest ache. You don't have to pretend with me, he said quietly. Not here. Not now. The words were simple, but they carried weight. They wrapped around me, grounding me while also stirring a fire I couldn't control. I met his eyes and felt something shift. My resolve to stay composed, to be distant, melted in the warmth of his stare. Before I could think, I found myself leaning just slightly toward him. The proximity was electric. His scent enveloped me, warm and enticing, and my body betrayed me with a subtle shiver. Minseok exhaled, and it was almost audible, a sound that carried restraint and tension. He didn't move closer, yet the energy between us seemed to thrum with a life of its own. Jiho, he murmured, his voice low, deliberate, almost a whisper meant only for me. You don't have to run anymore. Not from me. Not here. I bit my lip, heart hammering. The words were safe, yet suggestive, wrapping me in warmth I had almost forgotten existed. I wanted to trust him, I wanted to give in to the pull I felt, but fear and habit kept me cautious. I started, then faltered. How could I explain that the air between us made me ache? That every brush of his hand, every glance, made my pulse spike? I settled for silence, letting my gaze meet his. He shifted closer, careful, deliberate, the space between us shrinking. My breath caught when I felt the heat radiating from him. He wasn't touching me yet, but the tension was palpable, a slow-burning current that made my skin tingle. You're mine now, he said quietly, almost a vow. The words made my chest tighten. Not possessive in a cruel way, but protective, commanding, grounding. I felt the pull of his energy, alpha and dominant, yet restrained. The kind of closeness that promised safety and danger all at once. I'm not used to this, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. He smiled faintly, a ghost of a smile, and leaned slightly closer. You will get used to it, he murmured. To me. To us. The air between us hummed. My pulse raced. I wanted to move closer, to close the distance, to feel the reassurance of his presence against me. And yet, part of me froze, savoring every second of tension, every heartbeat, every almost touch. Minutes passed like hours, the porch bathed in golden light. Minseok's gaze never wavered, and I realized I had never felt so seen, so observed, so desired without words. His presence alone made my body ache with something I couldn't name, a mix of longing, safety, and a magnetic pull toward him that defied reason. Eventually, he let the moment stretch, then straightened slightly, the spell broken but the tension lingering. Come inside, he said, voice low. You need to rest. And we'll talk more about everything. Slowly. I nodded, my body still humming from the nearness, the energy, the words unspoken but felt in every fiber of my being. I wanted to argue, to push back, to maintain control, but the pull toward him was irresistible. Inside, he poured tea again, this time handing me a cup with a look that was both teasing and serious. I caught the subtle curl of his lips, the way his eyes lingered on mine, the almost imperceptible brush of his fingers as he passed the mug. Drink, he said softly. It'll calm your nerves. Or maybe, just settle your mind a bit. I smiled faintly, feeling the tension ease only slightly. My body still responded to his proximity, to the scent that clung to him, to the way he moved and watched with silent, magnetic intent. Every breath, every glance, every small gesture was a conversation, a pull I couldn't resist. And I realized, as I sipped the tea, that this was only the beginning. The bond between us was no longer subtle, no longer avoidable. Minseok's presence burned into my senses. And I didn't want it to stop. Even if it scared me. Even if I wasn't ready to admit it. I was falling. Falling for the alpha who had found me. And I knew, deep in my bones, that I wouldn't resist for long. The rain had started again by nightfall, soft at first, then heavier, tapping against the roof like a steady heartbeat. The cabin was dim, only the warm glow from a single lamp filling the room. I sat near the fire, watching the flames twist and flare, trying to quiet my thoughts. Every breath I took was filled with Minseok's scent, wood, smoke, something faintly wild. He'd gone outside to secure the windows, his deep voice occasionally drifting through the half-open door. Every sound he made carried reassurance. It made me feel safe in a way I hadn't felt in years. But safety wasn't all I felt. There was something else, a low, constant hum beneath my skin. Every time he looked at me, every time he came near, it grew stronger, harder to ignore. When he came back inside, rain still glistened on his hair. He ran a hand through it, water dripping onto his shirt, darkening the fabric. My heart gave an involuntary lurch at the sight, the sharp lines of his jaw, the quiet power in the way he moved, like someone who had learned to control every part of himself. He caught me staring. "You should be in bed," he said softly, his voice carrying both a question and a warning. "I couldn't sleep," I admitted, pulling my knees up to my chest. He crossed the room and crouched in front of me. "Because of nightmares?" I hesitated. "Because of everything." His eyes softened, a flicker of something unspoken passing through them. "You don't have to say more. I understand." For a long moment, we just looked at each other. The air between us thickened, the firelight painting golden shadows across his face. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. His presence filled every corner of the room, every corner of my mind. He reached out, slowly, giving me time to move away, but I didn't. His hand brushed my cheek, rough and warm, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. I froze, my breath catching. "Jiho," he murmured, my name like a secret on his lips. "You've been through hell, haven't you?" I swallowed. I thought I could handle it alone. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but with something protective, fierce. "You don't have to anymore." Something inside me cracked at those words. The wall I'd built, the one that had kept me alive, suddenly felt fragile. His voice, his touch, his scent, they pulled me apart and put me back together in the same breath. "You don't even know me," I whispered, though my voice trembled. He smiled faintly, not breaking eye contact. "Maybe not everything about you. But I know enough. I know your scent. I know the way you flinch when you hear thunder. I know that you're trying to be brave when you don't have to be." The sincerity in his tone undid me. I felt my throat tighten as I tried to look away, but he caught my gaze again. "I'm not asking you to trust me completely," he said softly. "Just let me protect you." The words sank deep into me, filling a space I hadn't realized was empty. Without thinking, I reached out, my fingers brushing the edge of his shirt, the fabric damp from rain. His chest rose slightly under my touch, and I felt the tremor of his breath. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was alive. Every heartbeat felt louder, every inhale shared. The fire crackled softly, and I could feel his warmth radiating toward me. "Minseok," I said his name carefully, like it might break something if I wasn't gentle. "Yes." His voice was barely above a whisper. "You keep saying I'm safe here." I looked up, meeting his gaze. "But what if I'm not safe from you?" He froze, and then a slow, wry smile touched his lips. Not mocking, just sad, like he understood exactly what I meant. "Then I'll spend every day proving that you are," he said quietly. My heart stuttered. I hadn't expected that. His words were simple, but they carried weight, and I felt them settle deep inside me. The next thing I knew, he was standing and extending a hand toward me. "Come on," he said. I hesitated. "Where?" He nodded toward the porch. You need air. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. We stood under the eaves, the night cool and wet, the world wrapped in the sound of falling drops. I shivered once, not from cold but from the nearness of him. He draped his jacket over my shoulders without a word. His fingers brushed the back of my neck, and that single touch sent shivers down my spine. For a moment, we just stood there, two figures in the half-light, surrounded by rain and silence. Then quietly he said, "You've changed everything, Jiho." My chest tightened. I didn't mean to. He turned to me, eyes unreadable. I know. That's what makes it dangerous. There was something raw in his tone, a confession he wasn't ready to say aloud. But I felt it. I felt it in every stolen glance, every moment he held back, every time he looked at me like I was both temptation and salvation. He took a step closer. Just one. But it was enough. I could feel his breath, warm against my skin, the faint tremor in the air between us. "I don't want to hurt you," he said softly. "But I can't pretend I don't feel this." "Feel what?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "This pull," he admitted, his jaw tightening. "It's stronger than I've ever known. You're my fated one, Jiho." The world seemed to still. I'd heard the stories, about bonds that couldn't be broken, about alphas and omegas drawn together by something older than reason. But I'd never believed it. Not until now. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," I whispered. He nodded, his expression softening. "You don't have to be. I'll wait." The sincerity in his voice made my throat ache. His restraint was more powerful than any dominance, his patience more alluring than any claim. Without realizing it, I stepped closer. The rain had stopped completely now, and the silence felt like a heartbeat. He reached up, his fingers brushing the side of my face, tracing lightly along my skin. When he spoke again, his voice was a whisper that seemed to echo in my bones. "You're safe, Jiho. With me. Always." And in that moment, standing there under the fading rain, wrapped in his jacket, caught in his gaze, I believed him. For the first time, I let myself breathe. Let myself feel. Let myself imagine that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't meant to keep running. Minseok didn't need to mark me to claim me. He already had. Not through dominance, but through something deeper. Through gentleness. Through quiet promises. Through the way he looked at me, like I was the only thing worth protecting in this whole broken world.